Actually, the only thing we're talking about today, this wee video, is about why I read reverse cards. We'll stick that as an enter. Why do I read reverse cards? Well, for a start, here I've got a deck that has 78 cards, and by reading reverse cards, I increase the amount of information available in this deck. If I turn cards over, the first thing you're going to notice is, okay, that's a healing card, and that's success. Now, so this is what I'm going to show you here. This is the Dark Rose Divination set. Why I'm showing you this is because whether you're using the tarot or whether you're using the oracle card, if you've asked a question, depending on what that question is, that reverse success suggests something very important. It suggests that, in this case, the healing that you're seeking, whatever it is you're trying to fix, is not likely to succeed. There you can go on and look at advisory. You can draw more cards. It depends on the layout that you use. It is important, though, to understand that as soon as I do this, I've just manipulated my cards. I have made them what I want them to be, rather than allowing them allowing them to be what they are, what they were drawn at. And that becomes probably my biggest reason, aside from all the other positives that I'm going to show you in card relationships, and also how reversals affect a spread, a larger spread. There becomes that moment that manipulated my deck. Now, if this was perhaps something that was a bit of a tough card, so let's go for a tough card, something that maybe you would look at in not such a good light, and say our reverse card was omens, then you might think, okay, reverse, that means more like messages, something a bit nicer, although it doesn't really matter. Omens is omens. It's not good or bad. We can take a more positive connotation, I suppose, if you've got a difficult card and it's reversed. So you get the death card, for example, and it's reversed, or you get the devil card and it's reversed. The devil card reversed in a tarot could indicate that you're getting something under control, that you are working well with your habits, or that you're successfully changing something. So reversals have a two-sided street to them. When you've got difficult cards, it allows you to look at the more positive aspect of that card. You don't need, in any deck, a tarot deck that's got 78 cards, all have meanings, and you don't need to make a designation for a card beyond what it is, because you now have a positive and a negative aspect to each definition. It's not a whole new meaning. If you've got a book that's sort of, which when I was learning a long time ago, the very first thing I did was buy a few books, and they didn't work very well because I would have 3 or 4 pages assigned to one card, and it just didn't make sense to me. So here's my first piece of advice. If you've got a Rider-Waite deck, go and get Arthur Waite's Pictorial Key to the Tarot. It's about his deck. It's not about anybody else's deck. It's a basic meaning for all the cards. It's not as clear and direct as you might like to hope. It does have the symbology in it, but it tells you something very important. And what he tells you is that you read reversals. So that means his deck is designed with that in mind. And anything that follows the precept of his deck, of the Arthur Waite deck, every other deck following that precept is therefore designed to be read as reversals as well as regular cards. Things can happen. So say I turned out all of these cards and they're all reversed, okay, except one. Then this case is only 3 cards, but you get the idea. If I had a layout and everything's reversed, it's 10 cards, and there's 1 or 2 that aren't, clearly I've just been holding my deck upside down. Turn them around, boom, 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 sort that. If you've got an upright card, in that scenario, you turn it around so it becomes upside down, it becomes a reversal. The interesting thing about understanding that is you're putting it down to what you understand. I held my deck up the wrong way, not manipulating your cards. So those are one of the first reasons. Now, the second thing we're looking at is it can often give you a why, and the why can be the card reversed or the card that isn't reversed. So we'll take the procrastinate card and we'll take the union card. Important because this is quite a lot. I forgot to turn that camera around. Sorry about that. So they're all the writings back to front. But the procrastinate card in this instance is in reversal position. The union card is upright. So this means one of 2 things, depending on the question. The question is always important. It can mean that a person is putting off making a commitment, right? That's the first obvious sign of this, the union, the commitment, the rings. We've got a set connotation. If you turn it around the other way, this is card relationships for you, suddenly it looks quite different. This means the person is um, putting off or procrastinating because they don't want a union. Do you understand? So this is suggesting something quite different. And depending on the question, that negative card or that reversal can mean one of two different things. And you've still only got two cards, and you've now had two different interpretations with those two cards, only because one card was read as a reversal. If they were both read the same way up, you're stuck with what you've got there. But also you're left with, especially if you're reading for yourself, you're left with this self-interpretive thing that we do, which is looking for the best we can in it. If you use the reversed card, you can't really go anywhere away from that. You can't sit there and make it up. You know, it's there, it's reversed, it's telling you that this procrastination, getting on with things, could be a problem. Now, if you say went the other way around and you've got this unions in your mind and procrastination is reversed, it could be the end to procrastinating. So the order of the cards suddenly gives you two connotations for the two cards, another two connotations for which one comes out first, if that makes any sense to you. The larger you're reading, the more important this reversal card will become. The other thing about manipulating your deck, which is important, is I have seen it a lot. You know, I used to have a shop. I had a couch with a table with lots of card decks on it, and I would see people manipulating their readings. And quite frankly, you might as well just not bother at that point. If you can't look at something the way it should be. These cards have words on them, but a tarot deck, even if the words aren't on it, they all have a meaning. You could write a basic word on each card, but the idea of putting a whole meaning on it takes away all intuitive response or looking at the card, looking at the picture. So that's another show. Anyway, so with the reversals, something could be required more of. So say I've got investigate reversed. I'm not asking a question, so that's why we've got all these possibilities. As soon as you have a question, and if it has a card position, it makes a whole big difference as well. So say we've got investigate reversed, it can mean that I should look closer at something, to take a bit more time, or it can mean straight out I haven't looked close enough already at something. And if you've got a problem, the chances are that that could be a little bit past tense, and that can explain why you are where you are right now. And that's helpful because you might need to just check in on that and check a little bit closer. But it can also mean that I'm reluctant, I don't look. It's going to mean investigate. Okay, so when it means I've best leave it upside down, no, it doesn't matter which way I put it, the writing's back to front and it's going to be hard for you. I'm really sorry about that, and I will remember that next time. I usually adjust the camera. So it's always going to be a card of investigate. So essentially a reversal does not change the meaning of your card. It doesn't even come close to changing the meaning of your card. What it does is it takes that meaning and allows you to look at it a little bit differently. So the Voyager Tarot, I don't really like them as a tarot deck, but they're pretty neat picture reading decks, and there are people that prefer size, but it's not a tarot deck and it's not meant to be. When you start looking at so we've got the Four of Cups, for example. The Four of Cups can quite often be a little bit of a challenging card. It can be one of resentment, or it can be one where you're finding things a little bit tricky. But once it's in its reverse position, it's that maybe you have a realization about what's going on, or you find enough information. So we're back in that investigate zone to allow you to understand exactly what's going on before you do any more damage to it, or do damage to it, I should say. When we've got a court card reversed, a court card, the Man of Cups is just the King of Cups. When you've got a court card reversed, you are at maybe having problems with a person. Okay, it could be a man or a woman, but it will be somebody who's emotional, most likely, and that could be why you've got a problem with them. So understanding that if you start adding these reversals to your readings, you will put yourself in a position where you get a whole lot more information. More cards doesn't always mean more information, and again, that's something I see people doing a lot. But I'm going to run a little one of these every week for a while to cover these bases, or you can just buy my book, Dorothy Holder's Ultimate Guide to Reading Cards. It's not about reading the tarot. There's no card meanings in it. It's about questions, spreads, layouts, reversals, echoes, hidden meanings, looking for patterns, that kind of thing, and how to have a layout that actually assists you in creating an environment to answer the question you want. When you're reading for yourself, this becomes really, really important. When you're reading for others, then, grab your deck and do what you like. But at the same time, I think you're doing a disservice. Now, this is I created this as well. This is my Lenormand deck. I love Mademoiselle Lenormand. And of course, normally you would, her standard layout, not a special layout, her standard layout was the whole 36 cards, but there are only 36 cards. Now, what happens if you don't read reversals here? I'll just show you a few little cards, popping them in there. And if you don't read reversals, this could present a little problem for you. Okay, so now we've got these court cards. See these here popping up. Now, a reverse card doesn't change that it's a stork, not for a Lenormand deck, and there are other decks that are like this, like you would always read that the same way, reversed or not. What it changes, though, is the card relationship to the one next to it. Here we've got the king facing away from the queen. So in the larger picture and the larger scheme of things, and of course always the woman or the man card is what we're radiating out from in her readings, although you can do smaller ones, and I've developed those in channeling Lenormand. I feel like, I've made these cards and I've written these books. But when we've got that, suddenly these hold a little bit more meaning for you. And if you're using cartomancy, this becomes very important, because we've got now the way the card is facing. So in this instance, you can say, yes, but, they've got one facing each way. Well, it's not quite the truth of it. There's a top and a bottom to the card. And so the top is the top, even if it's at the bottom. Does that make sense? And so she's now facing away. But if I leave her upright and I turn him upside down, the two tops are facing each other. Okay? Do you understand that? On the other side of that coin, the top of the card, if it was upside down and we just had these two, the top of this card is, the top of this card, if we have it upright, she is facing the letters card. Now, she's facing the letters card, then it could suggest in a reading that you are likely to receive a message or an email from a female or from a woman. If you are a woman, it doesn't make that any different. So there could be communications between two women. Do you understand? Because we've got a horse and rider over here, the cavalier. The cavalier is facing the king at the moment, and the king is gracing this card here of the birch rod. This is guilt, not feeling too good about what you're doing. And the cavalier is riding headlong into that, which suggests maybe that, there's going to be an action taken possibly by a man or a stranger or somebody you don't know too well that's going to make you feel guilty, because all readings are about the person asking the question, even if there are other people involved. So it's not likely that they're going to feel guilty about it, or even if they are, it's not likely that that's what you're reading when you do a layout. Now, if we turn that upside down, he's facing the fox. And if he's facing the fox, now we have an enterprising young man, maybe cunning, maybe clever, more likely clever, able to survive. So we start looking at relationships for cards. When it's reversed, we're giving it a direction, if that makes some sense. And I really like card relationships. They are very important as far as I'm concerned. And so when we start working those relationships and we can move him out of the way, we can look at the tree, which is growth, spiritual growth, development, working hard towards something. Once you've sown that seed, you still have to wait for something to grow, to develop. It can mean health or poor health in the Lenormand deck. Now we have the foxes facing the tree. So we could say that we need to be a bit smarter about how we're taking care of ourselves, or what health issues we've got. If you've got a health issue, that's exactly what that will mean. We may need to seek something new, or a person who's got just what we need, or a bit more clever or smarter. We could also be talking about business here, and it could be talking about we need to take on a partnership with somebody who's got skills we don't, or we need to be smart in how we develop a business. So we get a lot more range just by introducing a reversal, because if we put that back behind, suddenly we've got this card that induces a bit of cunning or a bit of clever, and we can look and say, well, actually, you might be getting wrong information from somebody you think knows what they're talking about. Or it could be that you are talking about a person being a bit dumb in the area of growth, whether it's health or business or whatever it is. It may mean too that a person is required to step it up and move forward on their spiritual journey, but they are staying in their old habits, and they may be manipulating information. So they may be determining that if this doesn't happen, then that's a good reason for me to stay with where I'm at, if that makes some sense to you. I don't need to change because this, and this, and this, which of course aren't necessarily relevant. When it comes to really good picture reading decks or reading picture decks, whichever way you want to call that, we've got the Sacred Souls Oracle here. When it comes to picture cards, this becomes a little bit trickier. And I would say at this point, you're looking at the cards themselves. What cards are they? Do they lend themselves to it? Are there two sides to the cards that make a reversal important? For me, with this deck, I don't usually read reversals except if it looks like it has a bearing. And so why I say that is here we've got a person card, and she is the only card, and this card here, where they're facing a particular direction. We've got the person in this card where they're facing a particular direction, but none of the other cards have that directional quality. And so to me, if I looked at this and it came out reversed, I'll use the big one so it's easier for you to see, the woman card. If she come out reversed, then I see her facing the shaman. I see her facing the Buddha. I see her facing that card of spiritual energy. And so we are looking at something different to if I have her this way and she's just between these two. So it's up to you. But I always recommend that if your cards don't lend yourself to reversals because of the type or nature of their imagery, then if you're not going to read them, never read them. If you are going to read them, always read them. Or in this particular case, because it makes absolutely no difference. If I'm picture reading and this is upside down, it's got really nothing going on that I can actually make head nor tail of. So it's a deck that means you need to think a little bit about it. Because there's people in these decks, if that flashes into my mind, we've got a wounded guy here in the trust card, and he's facing away from the broken mirror. I would quite happily read that. And if he came upside down, while I would turn the card to look at it properly, because it is a picture reading deck, I would note that he was facing the mirror. And so that would mean to me that he's facing the woes, or the person, the querent, is facing their trauma, their problems, their issues, the things that have gone wrong for them. And so I think that's quite important as well. So we're not really selecting when and how with these cards. With this particular deck, we're selecting only where there are people. So if you look at this, because there's no directives on the card, you are free to just look at the picture and see what draws you in response to a question. And we've got one face on this that faces a particular way. She's not really doing that. But we do have the flamingo facing away. We've got the two women in this card facing a particular direction. So if they come out reversed, I will probably note that, but that's about all. And then I will turn it over so I can read it and look for the symbols. There's so many symbols in these that you really do have to look at them and take a bit of time over that. And if you are reading the symbols alone, then of course they need to be upright. So it makes no difference to you at that point. There are very few cards in here that I would read a reversal outside of if I'm looking at the symbols. You've got the other side of a picture reading deck, and there are quite a few of them out there, or there are a few of them out there, where in reversal, you can't really read that picture, but sometimes because it's reversed, you could say this is a trust card. You could say this person's struggling with trust. So it becomes simply an obstacle to what the card's intention is. But the card itself is set up to say trust might be an issue, as you can see by this guy with his heart and he's curled up in a ball. So it doesn't need to be reversed to give you that information. And so if your deck gives you enough information without reversals that you can read the positives and the challenges within the card, then you're in a position where reversals aren't necessary. But pretty much all tarot decks, the Dark Rose Divination, the Lenormand, reversals do have a place and a role. These Lenormand are tiny and they're lovely. This is my new Lenormand. I just wanted to create a deck that just slightly modernized and upbeat the cards without changing the imagery at all, because it's Lenormand after all. It should not be different to what it was. And in the 1800s, they published the first published deck had the cards in them, and I wanted those to be in there because they were there. So why take them out? It's in the late 1800s. I think now that makes that well over 100 years old, right? 120, 130, maybe even 140 years that they were first published, which is quite a long time, and quite a nice little deck. This, every card, like the house is a house. They're very simple. Coffin is a coffin. Clouds are clouds. You know, it's not really hard to, ship is a ship. So these aren't really deep cards to learn. Clover is clover. Tower is a tower. Lilies are lilies, and so on and so on. The scythe is the scythe. So they're very easy to read from that perspective. But her cards are based not on that alone. They're based on card relationships, and that is something that I've always been interested in. So this is why I always read reversals. While there are some decks that don't, like these, lend themselves or don't necessarily need the reversal for you to get what you want out of them, most decks benefit from that. So you take this 78 card deck, and by reading reversals, you find yourself suddenly doubling the impact. Now, I was going to show, and this will be the last thing I do today, because card relationships can't really be seen with just 2 cards effectively. When you take a little layout, I'll just split the deck any old way. When you take a little bit bigger layout, and so we've got regret, we've got transparency, we've got race, we've got inevitable, we've got karma reversed. I was going to go till I got a reverse card, so that would have been fun, wouldn't it? We'd have had them all over the table. These are very big cards. We couldn't get them all over the table. I'll pull them down so you can see that side there. Okay, so because karma's reversed, it just changes the tone of this whole 5-card layout. We got 2 difficult cards in here, and inevitable and karma are kind of like the same thing, but one's upright and one's reversed. So we've got these 3 cards: regret, transparency, race. So something's going to happen very quickly, won't necessarily be pleasant. Race are cold, they're hard, but they don't last long. Boom in, boom out. Being honest, we've got regret here in the first instance. So perhaps if you were reading this for somebody else or yourself, you'd be looking at this card and going, you know, maybe you should have been more honest about something, and it's come back to bite you. This is karma, but the negative side of karma, as in karma isn't bad news. So in this instance, because the karma card is reversed, it actually changes the connotation of this up here. It says that this is a result of that. Does that make sense for you? Now, if I read that upright only, then I can interpret karma to mean whatever within the space. I can pair these together. I can just put it at the end, but don't worry about any of it. The karma's okay. You'll face karma or whatever. Hiya, Soel, I need your reading. I'm not doing readings right now. I'm just telling you why I read reversed cards, but thank you for popping in and asking. So with the karma card reversed, you get this whole new view of these cards, and then you start looking at your relationships to them. I will do a little video on card relationships, but I did want you to see that one card here changes all that comes before it. Now, what if I did this with it and I moved it up here? What you've got by putting it here at the beginning is you can say, you know, whatever you're looking at right now, you're going to regret it and you're going to attract karma. That isn't going to be fun for you. Now, you might think, well, regret and karma are the same thing. No, they're not, because this karma card and all karma is external coming back at you. So it can be external coming back at you in a positive, that is to say you worked hard and you reaped the rewards, or it can come back and challenge you to look at how you're behaving. So, for example, in this case, we've got a guy who's not necessarily being as honest as he could, or a person, I should say, not necessarily being as honest as they could, or engaging in an action without necessarily thinking about the future, right? The future consequence, which is karma. And this is saying, oh, you might just need to think about that. Be more honest. So now we've turned it into, instead of a result down the end, you need to be more honest, or at least you need to be clearer about who you are, where you are, and what's going on, so that you don't engage in this, or you will find that this follows on from that. And the karma will be swift, and you're going to feel it. You're going to know it was there, and then it will be gone. But once you get it, it's a done deal. So this card being the end card now suggests that no matter what you do, if you don't take care of this up here, the end game is inevitable. So I hope you understand that. I hope that works for you. That's the end of our wee video today. I think that's quite enough on reversals. And have a play with them yourself. If you want to, you can pop along to www.dorothyholder.com and have a read of a few articles. I've got Learn Tarot and Oracle cards as a group on Facebook for those learning cards. It's new, so there's not a lot going on there at the moment, but I post regularly card meanings. I talk about the stuff. And I've got and I've got Tarot and Oracle cards where I just present basically all of my cards, do a few free readings here and there, and see how you go. So in the meantime, play with your cards, enjoy your journey. Ciao for now.